All right, welcome back to another episode of the Cody Tucker Show. As always, I'm your host, Cody Tucker. Got a pretty jam-packed docket of things to discuss, so why don't we just dive right into it? How about that? And some pretty interesting stories here at the end, which you'll definitely want to stay tuned for, because I think they're pretty goddamn fascinating. But before we get into, those topics, let's see, what is first? So, so a flying car prototype has been approved by the FAA, and we are all going to die. Jesus. I mean, now I will say, from the picture of this car, it looks awesome. Like, the car itself looks so fucking cool. But I am already such a nervous driver, like constantly like 10 and 2, fucking shaking. Like I do not do well driving a motor vehicle. The only thing that could make my fear of driving worse is for there to be fucking an aerial threat at all times. And a flying car is, I mean, it's already dangerous enough driving on a road. Now add in a second layer of cars 200 feet in the air. Like, okay, so this has been a thing that people have wanted for hundreds of years. That might be too long. At least 100 years, people have been talking about flying cars. As soon as a car was invented, what if they flew? Like that has been like in every sci-fi movie you watch, whether it's Blade Runner, Star Wars, whatever. There's always Back to the Future, always flying cars. There's they can be made. Like, we have planes, we have cars. Pretty easy to smush them together and make one. There's a reason why it hasn't happened. It's not because we don't know how to make them. There are smart enough people who could put wings on a fucking car. The problem is that it is a goddamn death trap. Like, just knowing how shitty most people are at driving, and how many times I've driven around and just seen, you see a traffic jam, and you're like, well, I wonder what the fuck happened. And you looked, and somebody has ran a red light and T-boned a fucking family of 5. That's horrible. Now, imagine that you are 200 feet in the air, and somebody T-bones you, and now you both plummet at breakneck speeds into oncoming traffic, who now instead of taking out 2 cars, you are now taking out like 5 or 6. It is, as cool as this car looks, we don't need cars leaving the ground. Just don't need it. Cars to boats, go for it. Like, you're at sea level regardless, whether you're on the road, in the water. You're in a spot that you can fucking manage. And there are cars that go into boat that, work as whatever, aquatic vehicles. I think Lyndon Johnson had one, which is actually pretty fucking funny, that Lyndon Johnson used to have a car that could drive into the water and become a boat. And he used to fuck with people by saying that the brakes were out and just fucking driving straight into like a goddamn lake and having people just shit themselves thinking that they're about to die, sitting next to, the president who most likely had the largest penis in world history. So I guess, worst comes to worst, they could use that fucker as a flotation device. But yeah, I am not a fan of this at all. Let the record show I am against flying cars. And already, like, can you imagine how fucking loud it's gonna be? Like, I live basically in a pretty small city, relatively adjacent to a much larger city. And I know how bad traffic is the closer I get to said larger city, and how just insanely loud the traffic is whenever you're walking around, like Dallas, Texas, Austin, Texas, wherever, New York, Jesus. The last thing we need in New York City is more of a chance for shit to fly into other shit. I mean, like how loud it would be. I mean, planes are loud. Even tiny planes are really fucking loud. Like, you can be sitting outside and hear a loud noise like, Jesus, is that a fucking, like, massive, like, jumbo jet flying over? And you look and it's just some little, like, you know, little shit kicker of a plane just putting along. And it's, like, blaringly loud. Now imagine 5,000 of them flying around, you know. I don't know. This is going to be... It is going to be a bloodbath as soon as this starts happening. I mean, I don't know what the FAA does. Pretty much the only time I ever hear FAA, it's because shit went wrong. You don't tend to hear, read news stories where the FAA did something amazing and saved lives. It's pretty much them, like, trying to cover their ass after a plane goes missing, or two planes fucking collide into each other, or a plane collides into a building. So, oh boy, this is a fucking nightmare. I mean, it is my biggest fear. Having a bunch of 16-year-olds getting their license and being able to just take off into the air. Oh my God. Drunk flying is going to be, which, you know, I think, I could be wrong about this, but I've read, like, some statistics that show that, like, drunk driving has decreased, like, drastically, you know, with, like, Uber and Lyft and just more people, like, not needing to get drunk and drive, which I guess nobody really needs to, but boy is it fun. Drunk flying is a fear that I didn't know I was going to have in my lifetime. It's something I thought, like, you know, my kids are going to worry about. Like, let those little fuckers, you know, get crushed to death by a car that just fell 300 feet. I did not think I was going to need to be worrying about this. Like, the amount of shit I worry about on a daily basis, whether it's, you know, am I going to wake up? Like, am I getting too fat to where, like, if I fall asleep, like, could it be fatal for me to fall asleep? Like, all those things. Is my foot going to get cut off? Am I getting lung cancer because I can't stop ripping through fucking heaters like a goddamn chimney? Yeah, I didn't think flying cars was going to be something I was going to be worrying about, but, well, here it is. So, yeah, well, you know, hopes and prayers for everyone, and, you know, may the best of us survive. All right, next. Oh, fuck this. Fuck everything about this. So Burger King in Thailand just started selling the real cheeseburger. It is 20 slices of American cheese, no meat. This is, like, I threw up in my mouth a little bit when I saw this for the first time. I was like, this has to be a fucking joke. And then I saw where the Burger King is. I was like, well, all right then. I mean, I've watched enough episodes of Anthony Bourdain or Bizarre Foods to know that people in Thailand eat some wild shit. So eating 20 slices of cheese sandwiched into a sesame seed bun is pretty mild compared to, you know, fucking deep fried scorpions and shit. Although I would try a deep fried scorpion. And from what I recall, apparently it tastes like almonds. I'm a big fan of almonds, so maybe I could eat bugs. I would never, like, I'm not lactose intolerant, thank God. But I think this would trigger lactose intolerance in anyone who ate this. And, I mean, I would be gummed up for months if I tried knocking down. And knowing me, knowing my just gluttonous mindset. Like, I wouldn't just order one of these. Like, I've never gone to a McDonald's, Burger King, whatever. Which Burger King, we'll set the record straight. Like right now, Burger King is the worst fast food burger on the planet. I mean, I think Whataburger is. I've shit on Whataburger plenty. I went and got Whataburger the other night. Just as disgusting as I remember. I don't know why I did it. But I went and got it. God, it was fucking gross. But across the street is a Burger King. And between the two, I was not picking fucking Burger King. Burger King is so fucking nasty to me. And yeah, leave it to that shithole of a chain for them to make a goddamn all cheese burger. 20 slices. Like, that cheese isn't real. I mean, that cheese is basically like, you know, whenever you used to buy CDs and you could, like, you rip off the plastic, which felt fucking amazing. But you rip off that plastic, that's basically it, just ironed out and spray painted yellow. That's the kind of cheese that's on this fucking burger. So, man, that being said, I would order probably 5 of these if if any other place made them except Burger King. I'm probably going and giving it a shot. God, I mean, just looking at the picture is making my fucking skin crawl. Blah. I mean, that's so much goddamn. It has not been. I would be lying if I said I haven't at times in my life gone into my refrigerator, seen a block of cheese, and just start cutting slices off of it and eating it. And before I realize it, I've eaten half a block of cheese. And this is at like 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, whenever I was like 12, 13, I would legit go into my kitchen and just cut half of the block of cheese and just bring it back into my room and just start eating it like I was a fucking mouse, and watching, you know, Comedy Central, waiting for the Girls Gone Wild commercials to come on. Like that is how I spent a good chunk of my preteen to early teen years. So eating just a shit ton of cheese is not that repulsive to me. Eating 20 slices of that shitty Kraft Singles bullshit in a bun is disgusting. Everything about that is fucking just putrid. God, no, fuck that. So let's move on before I fucking throw up, which I probably need to anyway, so maybe I will keep looking at this later. Use it as a point of reference. Oh, man. So this has been, I would say, biggest news story of the past, or at least in my world, biggest news story of the past week or so. So, in case you don't know, pretty sizable chunk of cocaine was found at the White House. And Secret Service did an investigation. And surprise, surprise, they don't know who the fuck whose cocaine it is. Secret Service concludes cocaine investigation. No suspect identified. Yeah, no shit. I am no Sherlock Holmes. I do consider myself a bit of an amateur sleuth. A gumshoe, if you will. I think I kind of have a pretty good idea of whose cocaine this is. There happens to be a fella with very close connections to the White House who is a habitual crackhead. And it's not a rumor. The fucker recorded videos of himself showing off his crackheadness. So, yeah, it's probably his. I mean, so like I read into this, 'cause I was like, how the fuck? So the White House, in my mind, I imagine the most secure, just cameras everywhere. Fucking, you can't. I mean, a fucking mosquito couldn't fart in that building without somebody knowing about it and recording it. Apparently, there are blind spots all over the White House, and I guess everyone knows who works in the White House knows where these blind spots are, so you could just stash shit in there. And that is where they found this cocaine, was by chance in an area by these like cubbies where cameras couldn't see. I mean, look, my local Walmart has basically 100% view with their security cameras. How the fuck does the White House not have that? And now, that is astounding. But also, there is not a fucking chance that this is the only time that a bag of drugs has been in the White House. I mean, finding a bag of cocaine in the White House, you could probably find that. I mean, a goddamn moron. A blind kid could walk through the White House and find a bag of coke, I imagine, or some sort of drugs. There is no way that that the White House is a drug-free zone. So, I mean, I'm surprised there's not a bag of fucking ecstasy pills, a bag of fucking, morphine. There's got to be. There's probably an entire pharmacy of the good shit in the White House somewhere. So, yeah, if the president's son happens to accidentally leave a bag of his coke, somewhere in the White House, big fucking deal. Look, I mean, at least in modern times, there ain't a single president that that isn't, at least got a toe in the drug waters. Fucking FD, I don't know. Let's start with Kennedy. Kennedy was a massive drug addict. He had a doctor literally called Dr. Feelgood, who would just make these concoctions of methamphetamine, morphine, codeine, basically speed. I mean, like the shit that killed John Belushi was basically put into a syringe and injected into John Fitzgerald Kennedy on a daily basis. And also given to his wife, Jackie Kennedy. So there's one president that was there are drugs all over the White House for him. Lyndon Johnson 100% was doing coke. The amount of alcohol that Lyndon Johnson was consuming in the White House, for him to have even been able to stand up straight, he was going to have to, bump a key just to kind of even himself out, like fucking Denzel in Flight. Who was after Lyndon Johnson? Richard Nixon. Tricky Dick, most likely a drug addict. I know Pat Nixon, his wife, hardcore alcoholic. They used to find her ass crawling around in the bushes behind the White House looking for shit because she was so hammered. So, yeah, she was probably dabbling in a little coke too. Who's after Nixon? Gerald Ford? Probably. I mean, Gerald Ford had legitimate CTE from football. So it could be drugs, or it could be that his brain looked like Swiss cheese. Jimmy Carter 100% was smoking dope. Jimmy Carter used to bring Willie Nelson to the White House, and Willie Nelson said he smoked weed with Jimmy Carter's son on the roof of the White House. So, yeah, I'm sure Jimmy Carter was definitely partaking in a little reefer. Ronald Reagan, that's God's president. Ronald Reagan was not doing drugs. George H.W. Bush, coke. Bill Clinton, everything. Bill Clinton 100% was lacing Viagra with cocaine. George W. Bush, cokehead. Obama, probably smoking a little grass, if I had to imagine. Donald Trump, a lot of Adderall. And then Joe Biden, I don't know what drugs I don't know what drug has the effect of seeming like you're lost everywhere you go. But whatever drug does that to someone, that's the drug he's on. And then, of course, his son is a actual crackhead, which is fucking hilarious. And, you know, whoever becomes president next probably will also be a drug addict. This will not be the last time that a bag of drugs will be found in the White House. Maybe people will be a little better at hiding it. I don't know. So I just thought that was fascinating that a big old bag of coke was found in what is supposed to be the most secure building in the fucking country, basically. Okay, so this shit, I'm so goddamn sick of this shit. So climate activists block golf course holes with seedlings and cement. So basically these fucking prick pieces of shit pussies that are so worried about the environment. Look, let me tell you something. If they got in the way of me getting a birdie, I'm burning down the whole fucking rainforest. I'm flying to Brazil, match in hand, and lighting that bitch up. Like if I'm telling you, if it fucks my handicap, oh man, there's gonna be hell to pay. Fuck the pandas, fuck the tigers. I'm taking out everything. And these pieces of shit went to this golf course and just filled a bunch of shit with cement and then planted a bunch of dumbass plants on the green. Now, that being said, my local golf course, the greens pretty much look like this already. So I'm kind of used to dodging piles of cement and, brush. But, yeah, like, I'm putting through about 5 layers of foliage every time I'm trying to fucking, sink about a 6-foot putt. So I'd probably still play this course to par, regardless. But just this whole fucking movement of these just whiny, and look, in all seriousness, I do actually care about the environment to an extent. I care about the rainforest. I love animals. I fucking cut up my goddamn plastic before I put it in the trash. Even though I don't think mine is going into the ocean. I'm pretty sure it's just going into a landfill somewhere. Regardless, I still feel better at night that I cut up my little, plastic and shit. I don't want some fucking turtle swimming around the ocean suffocating because I, couldn't take a pair of scissors to a 6-pack Dr. Pepper plastic. Regardless, I mean, I'm not that fucking heartless. But these pricks who keep fucking up stuff like this or going and just throwing paint onto paintings that are covered in glass. So you're not doing shit to the painting. All they got to do is have the goddamn cleaning crew come over and just spray a little Windex on the fucking Van Gogh. But these people that keep doing that are like gluing themselves to shit. Or these fuckers that like dumped a bunch of food coloring and shit into the Trevi fountain. They're really not doing a good job at raising awareness for the environment. They are making people really hate the fucking environment. Like I wasn't gonna be sending money to any of this shit anyways. But if I were so inclined at one point in my life to send money to help the environment, I am never doing it now. As long as these douchebags keep doing stuff like this, I'm not sending a fucking dime. I'm not recycling, which I don't recycle anyways. I mean, who has the fucking time? I don't do my part. I'm not carbon neutral by any stretch of the imagination. But now I might, I have a car that gets decent gas mileage. I might try to trade that fucker in and get like a 2004 Hummer. And just start blaring down the street. Fuck the environment. Fuck it. Fuck all this shit. Stop fucking with golf courses. Stop throwing paint on Van Goghs. I mean, just do normal shit. Jesus Christ. Okay, well, so somewhat speaking of things like this. So, police say tourists filmed allegedly carving Ivan and Haley on Rome's Colosseum have been identified. Yeah, fucking murder them. I saw this, and as a fan of history, the Colosseum is I would argue the most significant historical landmark in the world. Like, I don't know of another place that is that old with that much esteem that is still around. For these two fucking dickweeds to go there and carve Ivan and Haley, they need to be... I know they're filming Gladiator 2 right now. Use them as extras and chop their goddamn heads off. Not only for the fact that they did this, but anyone who spells their name Haley with 2 Y's already needs to be locked up. You don't have to carve your name into shit. Just having Hayley as the spelling of your name, fuck you. Lock them up. Put them in a goddamn Italian prison. Holy shit. And just the smug look on this douchebag's face. Like, he knew what the fuck was going on. And I think they tried to, like, make it seem like they didn't know that this was the Colosseum. What did you think it was? I mean, it's not a fucking Dunkin' Donuts. Like, it's... I imagine pretty clearly designated as the goddamn Colosseum. It's the most famous building in Rome besides, like, the Vatican, if you consider that as being part of Rome and not part of another country, whatever. Probably less brutal shit going on in the Colosseum than what's going on in the Vatican, but that's a whole other thing. I just think it's incredible that people are really stupid. And I'm one of them. I'm not above any of this. I mean, I would never carve my name into the goddamn Colosseum. I would never glue my hand to a fucking Monet. But yeah, I would never spell my name with 2 Y's. But, But apparently, according to, most of the comments, I'm a fucking dumb, fat bastard. Which, yeah, fair. but still, geez, you don't have to say it. All right, so enough of that. That's the news. Let's talk about some shit from history, sort of history. Holy shit. So, another three, I would say, very interesting stories. Hopefully you agree. Hopefully you also find them interesting. We got one about a Hollywood legend, one about a wild-ass president, and another about the singer of a very famous rock band. So, if you're into any of those 3 things, let's go. So first is the story of the curse of James Dean's car. So, James Dean, not porn star, actual actor James Dean. Massively famous actor from the 50s. Pretty much like the first teen idol, I would say. Was only in 3 movies in his lifetime. And I think only one of them actually came out while he was alive. But he made 3 movies. Rebel Without a Cause, East of Eden, and Giant. And just became this, like, he's one of the most famous actors to ever live. Even though only in 3 movies. James Dean also massive fan of racing. Massive fan of race cars. Fast shit. So James Dean bought this Porsche. And this Porsche is basically a goddamn rocket. A silver bullet. I mean, when you look at the car, it looks like a car that is real dangerous for a dude in his early 20s to own. James Dean got this car and was kind of driving it around, showing it to people. One of the people he showed it to, actor named Alec Guinness, which If you do know who Alec Guinness is, it's most likely because he was goddamn Obi-Wan Kenobi in the original Star Wars. He was also in, I think, like Bridge on the River Kwai. He's in a lot of shit. Alec Guinness met up with James Dean. James Dean goes to show Alec Guinness's car, kind of show it off to him. Alec Guinness said that he felt like chills down his body, told James Dean, "You will die in this car in 1 week." And James Dean said, "Okay, whatever." Like, kind of laughed it off. Alec Guinness was dead serious. Had a premonition that James Dean was going to be dead within a week in this car. A week later, James Dean is with a buddy. Buddy's in the passenger seat. They're driving around this like kind of cliffside, and they come around a corner, a little bit of a straightaway. Another car, or truck, I believe, is coming towards them in their lane. James Dean, according to the guy in the seat next to him, James Dean's last words were, and I quote, "He's got to stop. He'll see us." He didn't. The driver, claimed that he never saw this car. Never was paying attention to the road and just didn't see James Dean's Porsche and ran straight headfirst into him. The only person who died was James Dean. And this car was fucking mangled to shit. So James Dean dies instantly. The massive career that he would have had gone. He gets basically replaced by Marlon Brando. And that's it. James Dean is done. I believe like 24 years old, like young as shit. Only made 3 movies. It was probably going to be, could have easily been the biggest actor ever. Fucking dead. Now, what made the car seem even more like cursed, besides Alec Guinness, "You'll be dead in 1 week," is that what they did. So people were already just massively big fans of James Dean, obviously, and wanted pieces of the car as like memorabilia. Now, the engine of the car was actually still pretty decently intact. So they took the engine out of the car and sold it, and it ended up getting put into an actual race car. And the guy who was driving the race car was in a race, crashed, and died, and was the only person in that crash who died. The rest of the car, like the actual body of the car, all mangled up, went on tour around the country as basically a warning for teenagers and adults too, but mostly teenagers, to like practice safe driving, which James Dean, not long before he died, was in a commercial like a PSA for safe driving. So this car goes around the country, goes to all these high schools, so all these kids can go look at the car, this just mangled up Porsche, and see, you know, what happened to their hero, James Dean, which I don't even think James Dean was like driving super fast. Like it became the misconception that it was James Dean's fault that this wreck happened. Because, you know, he's in this like goddamn race car, so everybody thinks, oh, he must have been flying and not paying attention. I don't believe that was the case. I believe that the guy was in the wrong lane and didn't see the car. So, who knows? But, anyways, it gets shown all around the country as a warning. En route from one high school to another, the guy driving the truck so James Dean's Porsche is on a trailer being pulled by this truck. That truck gets into a wreck. The driver of truck gets shot out of the truck. James Dean's car, flies off the trailer and crushes the guy to death. In a final, like legit Final Destination fucking just like gory bloodfest. This driver ends up dead, crushed to death by James Dean's car. And yeah, so ever since then, people have been like, oh, this fucking car is legitimately cursed. So you might say, okay, well, this car must be like locked up somewhere. People need to like stay away from this damn thing. Well, no one knows where this car is. Car completely has disappeared somehow. Yeah. So, somewhere out there is James Dean's ghost car looking for another victim. So, keep your head on a swivel. My God. So, their story of James Dean's car. Next is the story of the first attempted presidential assassination. So, the first president who someone tried to kill was Andrew Jackson. Andrew Jackson was the Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Madison, Monroe, Adams, Jackson. Seventh president? I believe seventh president. Fought in the War of 1812, the Battle of Orleans. Massively influential president. Also, a real scumbag. I mean, not to go into just an insane amount of details about how much of a piece of shit Andrew Jackson was, but Andrew Jackson was pretty instrumental in the Indian Removal Act and forcing Native Americans out of the eastern side of the country and off into the west, where most of them fucking died. Andrew Jackson found this little like orphaned Native American boy and kept him not as an adopted son, but as a pet. Basically as a pet dog. And would show him to people as like a gimmick. Like, oh, look at my pet Indian. Not good. Andrew Jackson also, when he was elected president, had this massive party at the White House where basically all of Washington, D.C. was invited. Like, not politics Washington, D.C., but just the people. And so people would just show up to the White House and get trashed and wouldn't leave. So they basically had to like trick people into leaving the White House so that they could like lock the gate behind them. Andrew Jackson was liked by a lot of people, especially the common folk. He was, in a sense, Donald Trump before Donald Trump. Like, people in Washington, not a fan. And, obviously a good chunk of the regular country, like citizenry, also not a fan. But a lot of the common folks, especially in the South, massive fans of Andrew Jackson. But one of the guys who did not like Andrew Jackson wanted to kind of make his point. He wanted his point to come across loud and clear. So he went up to Andrew Jackson, pulled out a pistol, and fired it at him. Except that pistol misfired. So, pulls out second pistol, points at Andrew Jackson, pulls trigger, another misfire. Andrew Jackson is like, oh shit, I'm alive. Goes down the steps with his cane, beats the shit out of this guy. Almost beats him to death. Another guy comes over and helps Andrew Jackson beat the shit out of him. That guy was a fucking arch rival of Andrew Jackson's by the name of Davy Crockett. So you don't know Davy Crockett? I mean, King of the Wild Frontier. Dun, 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 dun. Wore a little raccoon skin cap. None of that shit probably ever happened. But he did move from Tennessee to Texas, fought in the Alamo, and was killed by General Santa Anna after, the siege of the Alamo. But Davy Crockett and Andrew Jackson, I do not believe were fans of each other. But regardless, Davy Crockett still helped Andrew Jackson beat the shit out of this dude. They pulled him off. End of that story. But Andrew Jackson, so they had the pistols tested to see, like, what happened, like, why they misfired. And there was no rhyme or reason, really, why the pistols misfired. It was basically a fluke that happened not once, but twice. Where, like, whenever they tested them, they fired perfectly. So it just didn't work when this guy tried to shoot him, and then again when he tried to shoot him a second time. But whenever they tested him, pistols were in perfect condition, worked just fine. So it was like a 1 in a million chance these didn't go off and kill the president of the United States. Also, Andrew Jackson, known for being able to take a bullet. So before this, he was in a duel. Actually used to duel, I think, quite a bit. But he was in a duel with someone where he, knowing that the other guy was going to be real nervous, trying to get off the first shot as fast as possible, was probably going to be pretty shaky and not able to fire, not able to fire with like deadly accuracy. So Andrew Jackson just stood there and let him shoot him. and was right. The guy shot, like, I think nicked his shoulder or something, like barely even clipped him. And then Andrew Jackson shot him. And, into that duel. So Andrew Jackson, a wild motherfucker. And to put a bow on the Andrew Jackson story, when Andrew Jackson was alive, he had a parrot who he taught how to speak, like most people with parrots. And like most 12-year-old boys with parrots, only taught the sumbitch to say cuss words. That's it. Just taught this parrot to just swear like a goddamn sailor. And so when Andrew Jackson died, they had his funeral. Parrot was also at funeral, and they had to escort the parrot out of the funeral because he couldn't stop cussing in, the back of the funeral house. So, yeah, wild. So there's the Andrew Jackson thing. Andrew Jackson was definitely a big piece of shit, but kind of a badass in some ways too. So, history's complicated. So, last story involves one of the, I would argue, most underrated rock bands of all time. A band who was, for a good number of years in the 70s, massive, is a band, Three Dog Night. Which, if you don't know who Three Dog Night is, that's probably because you didn't have alcoholic parents. If you're around my age and are very familiar with Three Dog Night, it's probably because you're very familiar with your family getting trashed and singing, Jeremiah was a bullfrog, as loud as they could at 2 a.m. while you're trying to like beg them to go home, for us to go home. Could that story be a little personable about me? Possibly. So anyways, Three Dog Night, massively famous band. Huge singles like Joy to the World, One, Mama Told Me Not to Come, Never Been to Spain, Black and White, I think, is one. Anyways, huge songs throughout like the early to mid 70s. Their entire career as a band was funded by the Mafia. So the Mafia had a real strong hand in making Three Dog Night a very successful band. Even so, I think like their accountant was shot and paralyzed by a member of the Mafia. Like, Three Dog Night was, very, very well connected to, to the Mafia. But the story that is, I think wildly fascinating involves the lead singer of Three Dog Night, a fellow named Chuck Negron, who is also the cousin of the pizza delivery guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. So that guy, the guy that delivers the pizza to Sean Penn, a.k.a. Jeff Spicoli, during the middle of, geography class. That's a guy named Taylor Negron, cousin of Chuck, who is singer of Three Dog Night. So old Chuck, he, like most rock stars, especially in the 70s, is just fucking his way through the United States. I mean, banging everybody, left and right. Which, this is obviously pre-AIDS, so the worst thing that's going to happen is you get a little bit of the clap, take a penicillin, and, you're back out there on the field. So old Chuck is, just plowing. And ends up getting kind of burning, painful feeling on his penis. And looks, his penis is massively swollen and chafed. Now, obviously, this is in the 70s when every chick basically had a prehistoric fern growing in their pants. So, yeah, probably going to be a little bit of rug burn on that thing. So, he looks at the swollenness and the chafing as like a sign of pride, looks at it pridefully. Like, I'm doing so much fucking that my dick is like getting tougher. Like, I'm getting calluses on my goddamn pecker right now. So he kind of ignores it for a little while. Then it just gets worse and worse, and finally goes to the doctor. Doctor tells old Chuck, hey, you got to stop fucking. Like, you've got to keep it in your pants, at least for a little bit. Let this chafing and swelling go away, or it could be bad. And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. Immediately just goes out and starts having sex with groupies again. Until one time he's having sex with this woman, I believe a Miss America contestant, so good on you, and feels a really painful sensation and hears a ripping noise, what he described as a ripping noise. Looks down, and his dick has literally burst open, like exploded, popped open like a goddamn Hebrew national. And is like, uh-oh, this isn't good. So immediately he's like, hey, I'll call you. Gets in a car, goes to the hospital. They sew his dick back up. And apparently, like, all the nurses are like laughing because they're like, Jesus Christ, this dude's dick exploded. And sew it up, and as soon as he's healed again, back at it. So that's the story of Chuck Negron, singer of Three Dog Night, one of the, I think, criminally underrated bands, whose dick exploded. So with that, I guess that'll wrap up this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Again, be sure to like and subscribe, tell a friend, all that good stuff. And until next time, goodbye.